manager were feeling about things. And certainly some of the testimony that we've heard from other individuals who were frontline staff has given us a sense of the passion and the commitment to really helping people. I think of Brandon Donoff, who is a frontline paramedic, critical care paramedic based out of London, who is very highly trained and has written books on it. Jonathan Lee, who works out of Markham. Now, would he have been in your area?
Yes. Mr. Lee reported to me.
Yeah, and he would on the pediatric team now. And we were very impressed with the commitment and the passion that these folks have had. I'm not asking you to name names, but can you think of, incidents or people who, and as I say, I'm not asking for names, but the sort of characteristics you observed in demonstrating that sort of passion that people had and commitment to the job?
I'm sorry, I don't think I understand your question.
Well, you seem to be very empathetic and concerned about what was going on with the frontline people. And so often what we've heard is negative. I mean, we've had Mr. Klees who said, I wouldn't want to be a pilot, I wouldn't want to be a patient, I wouldn't want to be a paramedic. This is just something that's totally broken. You seem to have been at the regional management level and paying a lot of attention to what was going on the front lines. So you've told us some of the operational challenges. What about the actual service delivery?
Okay.
In terms of the individuals, the paramedics who were out there actually interacting with patients.
The individuals that I worked with in the operations department were as universally dedicated and committed and as any group of people you'd hope to have in any organization. Certainly my peers, the regional operations managers in other regions, were at least as dedicated as I was. I mean, for me, this was a pit stop position on a way to a business career. For them, it was their career.
This was their life.
That's right. Many of them had been former paramedics and had dedicated their careers to helping sick people. For me, helping sick people was just a lucky opportunity, something that I was proud to be a part of, but not something I dedicated my career to. There were scores, I'm sure still scores, of people in the organization who want to do a good job and have what it takes to do a good job, but they need the right leadership and direction and culture. Without the right support, your best intentions don't get you far enough.
You talked about the fact that even at the time that you were there, that morale was low because people had a sense of struggling to do their job. What sort of impact would you expect it would have then to have this intense public scrutiny, a lot of it very, very negative, people denigrating the job that the people do? How would you expect that to impact the people that you had working for you?
I know that workers on the front line have been exposed to some abuse because people tend to tar the whole group with the same brush. People see, orange scandal in the news, and I think most people don't take the time to understand that this was orchestrated by a small group of people, and they're brightly colored vehicles, so they're sort of a magnet for public opinion, and I know that gets some of them down. I think that they see it as a necessary evil. I'm not close really with people there anymore, but I know that they believed that the leadership was broken and that the operation was broken, And I expect that they see this as a catalyst towards fixing those things. So, I would expect that they see it as, the darkest. Was the saying? The night is darkest before the dawn. I think that's probably where they are now. Nobody's happy to see what's happening, but then nobody was happy with the status quo either. So if this moves them forward, I think they probably welcome that, and will suffer with the short-term damage to their brand that they literally wear on their sleeves. But hopefully, it's a new beginning.
Yeah, and you're certainly right about visibility. My little preschooler grandson sees one flying over Muskoka and goes, "Oh, orange helicopter!"
Yes.
He knows what it is.
Yes.
He knows it's headed into
Yes. And
in and out of hospital or. Yeah.
Nobody on that helicopter had anything to do with what we're discussing here.
Exactly.
They're hardworking, highly trained professionals.
Yeah. You talked last time about the fact that you were terminated from Orange in, I think it's January 2010.
Yes.
And from the area manager position that you were talked about. Who did you report to directly at the point you were terminated?
Sandra Burnside, the Director of Operations.
And she in turn reported to?
The Vice President of Operations, Steve Farquhar.
Okay. And you indicated that you were fired because other executives at Orange said that they thought that you thought they lived in an ivory tower. Can you explain, number one, who said that to you, and then secondly, why would they say that? It seems like an unusual conversation to have at termination, if I can put it that way.
It wasn't. The whole conversation was unusual. Steve Farquhar said that to me, and it was true. I did believe that. They were living in an ivory tower. They were disconnected from reality, unable to see that the problems that were driving them crazy were of their own making. I tried many times to explain that you've made operational excellence a strategic objective, yet the culture you cultivate precludes operational excellence. I couldn't make my superiors understand that.
Okay. So if you went back, say, 6 months before you were terminated, at that point, because you'd been there for 6 months as area manager, so would you have still had a positive relationship at that point, or? I guess, was there a culminating incident point when this relationship went south?
No. It was a pattern of me bringing forward my concerns and my analysis as to what I thought the causes of the problems were and what I thought the right remedies were, and my being rebuffed. There was no climax, so to speak, but it was a pattern. And as I said to Ms. Jelena, this company systematically eliminated people who disagreed with the direction that things were going. So I felt that I was one of those casualties.
So you felt that you were one of the people being systematically eliminated because you were speaking out on behalf of the employees and trying to find a better way of doing things.
I had seen it happen to other people before me, and when I was terminated, it wasn't a surprise.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Moridi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Lebo, for appearing before this committee for the second time. Last week when you appeared before this committee, you said, and I quote, there were plenty of secrets at Orange. I just want to explore this statement a little further with you, if I could. It has become abundantly clear to this committee through our 17 hearings and over dozens of people who appeared before this committee that Dr. Mazza kept many, many secrets from the employers, from the employees, and from the public, and also from the government. Shortly after, you said there were plenty of secrets at Orange. You made mention of Dr. Mazza's girlfriend, Ms. Kelly Long. Did you know Ms. Long?
I did.
As Dr. Mazza's executive aide, you served for some time as his executive aide. What was the nature of your professional relationship with Dr. Mazza?
The nature of my professional relationship with Dr. Mazza?
That's right.
I was his executive aide. I worked closely with him. He very generously allowed me to observe a lot of high-level meetings, and he and I understood that part of the reason I accepted this role was so that I could observe firsthand what happens at the highest levels of an organization and learn from that. So I often accompanied him on meetings and observed him day to day. He didn't include me in everything, but I was physically close to him. My desk was closer to his desk than anyone else's desk. I'm not sure what else I can tell you. It was a good working relationship.
Okay, thank you. And what was your professional relationship with Ms. Long?
Our desks were in close proximity, so we saw each other in the office every day, and we chatted and said hello as you do with people that you see in the office every day. But our work, we didn't cross paths very much in terms of our work. I never worked with her on anything, but she was a face that I would see in the office every day.
What was exactly, when you used the word secret, what were you referring to in relation to Ms. Long?
Well, Mr. Singh asked me last week, what the secrets were, and he put me on the spot, and I had trouble coming up with some answers, and I've had a week to reflect on that, and have some other ones that I've already shared in the last little while. I can only speculate. I was always told that they were friends. So we know now that they're together. So, when did that change? Is that a recent development, or is that an old development that was kept secret? I don't know, but I suspect the latter.
Do you believe that Dr. Mazza kept his relationship with Ms. Long secret from employees?
It wasn't a secret that they were friends. If they were more than that, then that was secret. And that's why I can't tell you, because it was secret from me.
Do you believe that Dr. Mazza played a hand in the rapid cession of Ms. Long's position and also her salary?
Now, in the time that I was at Orange, Ms. Long was a relatively junior person in the communications department, and she seemed to me well suited to that position. There were no red flags to me at that point. What happened to her career trajectory after that, I only know what I've read in the media. But if your question is, could she have become a vice president without Dr. Mazza's intervention? I don't see how that could possibly be the case.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Tom Lepine testified before this committee that if anybody crossed, that's his word, Ms. Long, then that person wouldn't last longer in the organization. Would you agree with this statement?
I've heard stories about people who discovered that for themselves, but I have no first-hand knowledge of anyone who suffered repercussions for upsetting her.
Okay. Mr. Lepine also claimed that Ms. Long had special access to Dr. Mazza relative to her colleagues. Do you agree with this statement?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Are there any secrets regarding Dr. Mazza and Ms. Kelly Long that you would like to elaborate on?
I really don't know anything about them other than what I've read in this committee's transcripts in the media, I knew that they were friends. I don't believe that that was a secret. But, as for further details of the relationship or the timing of the changes in their relationship, I don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lebo. And Mr. Chair, I'm returning this to Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Zimmer. Thank you. What was your starting compensation?
As executive aide to the CEO, $75,000 a year plus an opportunity to earn up to 30% of that as a performance pay. I, in fact, earned about 20% of that.
And your departing compensation?
As a regional operations manager, my base salary was $85,000 plus an opportunity to earn up to 27% performance pay.
And when you left, did you get a package?
I did.
And what was the package?
I received 3 months severance plus a bonus payout that was... So because the year wasn't complete, and it's supposed to be performance pay, so it was really just a calculation. They took my results from the previous year and calculated it pro rata, and that's how they decided how much bonus payout I would get.
And who led the negotiations on that, on the company's side?
Rhoda Beecher.
Okay. And what reason were you given for your sayonara?
I was told that the organization was undergoing restructuring in the operations department, and that I didn't fit in with the new vision.
And how long had you been employed there?
Exactly 2 years.
Okay. Do you know Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Where do you know Mr. Bloom from?
From Orange.
Did you know Mr. Bloom before Orange?
No, I didn't.
Did you work with Mr. Bloom at Orange?
I was in close physical proximity with Mr. Bloom. Our desks were close together, but I didn't work with him, no.
Were you aware of the rumors floating around the place about Mr. Bloom's drug problem?
No.
On Dr. Mazza's salary, the evidence that we heard was that Dr. Mazza went to great pains, or was quite troubled by the idea that some of his salary, the knowledge of it, would get out into the public domain. Were you aware of that concern of Dr. Mazza's?
Yes.
How did he express that concern to you?
It wouldn't have been expressed directly to me, but I would have overheard him expressing that during the meetings of the executive management team. He wanted his salary to remain private. He was a private individual. I guess he felt that there are a lot of people out there who would be eager to get him, and the less information they have, the better.
At the time that you became aware of those concerns, did you know what his salary was? That it was $1.4 million, I think it was?
When I was his executive aide, Okay, there's a few issues that I need to unpack. I don't think his salary was $1.4 million while I was there. I understood his salary to be in the neighborhood of $400,000 to $500,000 while I was there. He disclosed documents to me that suggested that his salary was in that range, and that's what I believed his salary was.
And it was a matter of public record at that time. It was on the Sunshine List.
In the time I was there, I think he had already disappeared from the Sunshine List, but I could be wrong.
But his salary initially was on the Sunshine List.
It was initially, yes.
And so it wasn't a surprise that he was getting $400,000. But then sometime afterwards, he became agitated that the salary was going to get out into the public domain.
Yes.
So a logical conclusion is that it must have taken a big jump to create that anxiety on his part.
I don't know if I would necessarily say that's a logical conclusion, but it's a reasonable guess.
It's all right. Did you know that he had taken some steps to get some opinions from a leading Toronto law firm, Faskins, in particular one Guy Giorno, about whether he had to disclose the salary or not?
No, I know that Orange worked with Faskin Martineau a lot and was getting legal opinions from them on all kinds of things, but I wasn't part of those conversations. I don't know.
So typically, at least around this place, an executive assistant, my executive assistant, I'm sure others here, have access. They see what's coming in on their boss's email account. They see the correspondence coming in. Did you have access to Chris Mazza's incoming emails and his correspondence?
No.
Incoming, outgoing?
No, it's important to distinguish my role from that of an executive assistant. Dr. Mazza did have an executive assistant, but my role was one of business analysis.
Let me take you to the email. I think you've got a copy of it here. I'm referring to the email from Chris Mazza dated November 1, 07 to Malcolm Bates, the Ministry of Health.
Thank you.
Everybody's got that?
Does everyone have that?
Yes, that was introduced.
Oh dear. By Malcolm?
Yes.
I think Malcolm's testimony. Because somehow we've got it that come from testimony. I think it was part of Mr. Bates' testimony.
Okay. Would other members like a copy of this email?
Yeah, you might want to have it because I'm going to go through it in some detail.
Okay, and we'll have to make a copy, and you just have a couple minutes left. Although the committee decides they want to extend it a few minutes, that's fine.
Well, why don't we take a couple of minutes and do the copy, and then I can pick it up and treat it all as a whole.
Recess for a couple minutes then until we get those copies made. And you have 3 minutes. Hopefully, we'll have the copies back.
Agreeing to come back. Some of the most shocking testimony that you did last week, certainly the one that grabbed headlines, had to do with what you said at the very end, and coming back on this had to do with anything you can remember about the disgruntled employees when they talk to one another, if they talk to people outside, anything at all that you haven't shared with us yet?
No, if any paramedics were talking to outside parties, I'm sure they would have tried hard to keep that from me, lest I, inform on them.
Okay, so it would be by design that you would have been excluded from this because you were considered part of management?
Sure. I mean, people understood that if you went to the ministry or you went to the press, you were going to lose your job. So they weren't going to tell their manager about it.
And you know that they will lose their job because of the confidentiality agreement that they have to sign?
No, I think it was just understood that you did not go outside the organization.
So right now, I'm sure you've heard what's going on with Mr. Wade, who testified here and has been suspended. Does that seem consistent with the culture at Orange when you were at Orange?
I don't know what's going on with Mr. Wade. I understand that Orange is saying that what's happening has absolutely nothing to do with his testimony here, and I don't know if that's true or not. I don't feel like I could comment on that.
The confidence has not been rebuilt, that now when Orange speaks, we know for a fact that it's speaking the truth. The old culture that people didn't believe when management spoke is more or less still there.
I don't know. I mean, I can only speculate, but it seems unlikely to me that they would treat Mr. Wade that way because of his testimony, because it's so transparent. I don't know Mr. McCurley, but I don't think he's that dumb, which makes me think that what he's saying is probably true, that there's something else, but I don't know.
If you look at what was happening at Orange, it was having an effect on the operations of it. Yet, like we function within the Ministry of Health, where the Ministry of Health pays in agencies to deliver services to the people of Ontario. The ministry has a role of oversight, yet none of this worked. Orange continued to go down this path that affected operation. Do you figure that what happened at Orange could be happening in the 3,000 and some other transfer payment agencies of the Ministry of Health? That this, like those circumstances could be repeated someplace else?
I guess that's more likely than not. I mean, it depends what you want to say, that Orange, that the mistakes made at Orange were a random error or a systemic error. Is there something wrong with the system? Is the system fundamentally lacking in oversight and controls? You probably know better than me, but It looks to me like the basic framework of a strong performance agreement was missing. Mm-hmm. The performance that Orange was supposed to deliver was not sufficiently articulated, and the compliance wasn't sufficiently communicated. So it would be my guess that that's probably a systemic error that you would find in other organizations.
And thank you very much. We'll move to the government, which has 2 minutes left.
Yeah, thank you. You got this memo from Mazza to Bates. The first sentence, further to our telephone conversation, I'm deeply concerned by and opposed to the sudden overreaching proposal of the Office of the Provincial Controller to consolidate the financial statements of Orange. And then he goes on in 4 pages of a detailed analysis on 10 points, and then he concludes the last sentence. Given all of the foregoing, that's all his detailed reasonings why it's a bad idea, we trust that you, meaning the Ministry, will immediately withdraw this proposal, which completely flies in the face of public policy, and so on and so on and so on. And he says there's not one single indicia reason why Orange statement should be consolidated. What do you know? Did you work on this document?
No, I've never seen this document before.
Did you know that Mazza was passionately opposed to consolidating, to putting the...
Yes, I did. I did know that.
And did you give him any advice on that?
No.
Did he ask you for any of your advice?
No, I know governmental relations is not my area of expertise. He wouldn't be looking to me for that kind of advice.
Do you know who at Orange worked with Mr. Mazza on this idea that this was a bad idea to consolidate the firms?
He would have relied on his Vice President of Governmental Relations.
Okay, all right. And then in your role as an executive assistant, MBA person, do you have a view on whether it was proper for the government, reasonable for the government to say to Orange, because of the public monies involved, consolidate?
I don't feel qualified to give an opinion on that. I really don't have any opinion about it. I guess it seems reasonable to consolidate.
Did Mazza ever treat you badly, like rudely, aggressively, unprofessionally, yell at you, shout at you, say, get the hell out of here?
No more so.
Lose his temper with you?
No more so than you would expect any boss to do from time to time.
And we are out of time there. So we thank you very much again for coming once again to the committee, Mr. Lebo. Appreciate you taking the time. And we are briefly going to go into camera now. Okay, we're back in open session then, and we were in the midst of debate on the motion from Ms. Jelinek from March 7th as amended. by the committee, and Ms. Sandals, you wish to speak
Yeah,
to it?
and yes, and I was talking about the concerns that we had that had been captured by the auditor, and clearly the auditor. There are going to be some challenges, and just to review, because we're coming back to the middle of this, we are not opposed to doing a review of Mississauga. Mississauga, the information is public. It's appropriate now to do a review. In our view, the whole issue around Oakville is the issue, whether it's the appropriate time to be looking at Oakville, because obviously there are still going to be challenges accessing the volume of records that are protected by privilege, in particular solicitor-client privileged records. And in the case of Oakville explicitly, there are still ongoing proceedings, confidential negotiations, so that there's going to be a lot of concerns there. And it seems to me that, you know, this has been sort of presented by the opposition as cut and dried, and well, you can just do this and do it quickly. But it seems to us that, in fact, this is something that's going to be a somewhat difficult process, because Mississauga is pretty cut and dry. Oakville, it's very much up in the air. We're still awaiting the ruling from the Speaker as opposed on how much of the information is privileged. So I would actually like to move an amendment to the motion that's currently on the floor that recognizes that this is the way it is currently structured, that this is going to be a difficult audit, and to add the words by no later than September 1, 2003 to the end of the motion, which will say, I move that this, so as amended it would end up saying, I move that the Standing Committee on Public Accounts immediately request that the Auditor General examine the contracts and related documents between the Ontario Power Authority and gas-fired plants proponents, TransCanada Corporation, Oakville, and Greenfield South Power Corporation / Eastern Power, Mississauga, focusing specifically on the potential cost to ratepayers of the government's 2010 and 2011 decisions to cancel the projects, and report back in a special report by no later than September 1, 2003. And I have a... 2013. I'm missing reading a 1 in there. You're right, 2013. There's the motion.
Okay, so we need to so we'll recess for a few minutes so that we can make copies for everyone.
Well, if all it is a date, and if she's going to support the motion, if we support her amendment, and if Mr. Auditor, can you live with it within a year? Let's get this done.
They're suggesting Mississauga, not Oakville.
Oh, you taking
No,
up?
I didn't. I just read the motion that's currently on the floor. I disagree with the main motion, but if you insist on putting Oakville into the main motion, I think we need to make it clear that this is going to take a little while, or at least that we're clear that we're allowing the auditor. But I think they're copying.
So is everyone out? Basically, the only change you've made this is by adding the date by no later than September 1st, 2013. Correct?
Yes.
Is everyone fine with that?
So, well, I'd
you
like
read
to
it?
speak to that if I may.
Can you read it? Would you mind? Just so we can get it.
Well, we can. It's in writing. You can get a copy of it.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay, we'll just read it into the record,
I'm
please,
fine.
Will.
So Ms. Sandals moved that the Standing Committee on Public Accounts immediately request that the Auditor General examine the contracts between the Ontario Power Authority and gas-fired plants proponents TransCanada Corp. Oakville and Greenfield South Power Corp. Eastern Power Mississauga, focusing specifically on the potential cost to ratepayers of the government's 2010 and 2011 decisions to cancel the projects, and report back in a special report, here's the amendment, by no later than September 1st, 2013. So the original motion as amended included and relating documentation, which isn't in this motion, but that's already in the main motion as amended. Now we're adding by no later than September 1st, 2013 to the end of the motion. So that's the new amendment that is now on the floor.
Okay.
If I may speak to the amendment
Yes,
then,
you may.
please. So this amendment is directed toward addressing a number of the concerns that have been raised by the government and by the auditor about the feasibility of conducting this audit at this point in time. As we've said, this is a matter that was discussed over the course of several weeks at the Estimates Committee. That is the availability of the documents. It's a matter that involves large volumes of privileged records. It is a matter that involves third-party private sector companies in relation to highly sensitive commercial projects. And it's a review that will require the dedication of substantial resources by the Auditor General. It is incumbent on us to ensure that the Auditor General has the necessary time to conduct this audit, both to ensure he can get at the information he needs to get at, and it's got both Mississauga and Oakville in at the moment, but also to ensure he isn't forced by this committee to dedicate an overwhelming volume of resources in the immediate term, because we don't want to interfere with the production of the annual report. So this just lays out the expectation that obviously the auditor would produce the report whenever he is finished, but to make it clear that given the requirement to look at both Mississauga and Oakville, that may be a project that would take longer than simply to look at Mississauga.
Very well. Mr. Fedeli?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. The need to do this is real. I have heard on the other side that Mississauga is cut and dry, but I think it's anything but cut and dry and opens the door to questions that I would have about Oakville as well. First of all, after the announcement was made of the $180 million, in a very short period of time passed before it was corrected to $190 million. Then we learned of the sole-sourced deal between the government and the Mississauga proponent to build a new plant in Sarnia. This was a sole-sourced deal. You'll see in a moment why I'm highlighting that, Chair. It's anything but cut and dry. There are numbers that we are not aware of because it was sole sourced. I have a concern about that sole sourcing. First of all, we have no idea what kind of a deal was made, whether that was part of the deal with the $190 million penalty, whether it was included in there, part of it is buried in there. It's sole sourced. At the Estimates Committee on July 19th, our finance minister, the former Minister of Energy, said, and I quote from Hansard, when we were talking about why the Lambton coal plant was not simply converted from coal to gas, the tour that many of us took of Lambton, one of the first things that OPG representatives said when we walked in the door was about how all parties agree that the coal plants should be shut down by 2014. We weren't even sitting down before the executives talked about how easy it is to convert a coal plant to a gas plant. So in estimates on July 19th, Minister Duncan, former energy